Hey guys, this is Brian. I want to do a short presentation on what I'm working on for the BBS. I did a Facebook post on this not too long back, but I think it would be easier if it was seen instead of just kind of written. So what I'm doing for the BBS is I'm creating a Usenet feed for a Commodore 128 BBS. And not just any Usenet feed. I'm actually going to create a feed that's 30 years old. Now, it doesn't sound very exciting, but maybe not to you. It is to me. But what's interesting about it is, since the board's a retro BBS to begin with, and it's running on retro equipment, I thought, well, wouldn't it be kind of interesting to run retro feeds to it that sort of gave you an insight of what the BBS world was like 30 years ago, or what the world in computers was like 30 years ago. So it would basically start posting a list of topics for anything, movies, whatever was on Usenet at the time 30 years ago. So it kind of would keep in line with the whole retro theme. But in order to do this, you have to create software or some way of getting the content over to the BBS. Now, a Commodore 128 is definitely not the most modern thing in the world, so it requires a lot of back-end work in order to get that feed over to it. So we'll start where the original feed even came from. The feed is part of Usenet Archive, or archive.org. Someone had donated a ton of tapes that was archiving Usenet from UT-Zoo, and there's literally millions and millions of files that exist that were captured over the 1980s and early 90s by this group. And it has been donated to archive.org. That data has been pulled off of those tapes and put into a downloadable archive. So, but what needed to happen in order for it to work on the BBS, you have to create some sort of mail program in order to pick the files out you want, convert it to the format of which you need for Centipede BBS, and have it automatically send it out. So what I've been working on is creating a script that goes through these millions and millions of files, converts them into a proper format, and then automatically uploads them once a day. So I was going to take you through that real quick. What we're doing here, that's actually running. It's in the process of converting millions of files over. This will literally take days upon days. This has probably been running for about 24 hours. The problem is sometimes we find a bug in the way the code's written or the way that the message had been formatted. We have to go back, change it, and then it's going to go back and convert it all over again. So unfortunately, this runs for a few days. We find a bug, we delete it, run it again. So this is the actual script here. Now, it's not a very exciting script. It's written in PowerShell. What it's doing is it's going through these millions of files, and it's reading certain functionalities, or it's looking for certain headers or certain objects within the message, so I can put them in the right format for Centipede and then export them into the right spot. So we have, what it does is it goes through every one of these files, pulls out the file's news group, puts them in its proper news group, puts it into a folder. It randomly generates the name of the file, so there's no file clashing. So it just goes through here, and, well, you see, there's your standard everyday news groups that it's going through, and you can see that it's just pulling out those files and creating them. So after it's done doing that, what I have is on a virtual machine that is running XP, and it's running XP for a reason, not because I like old crusty OSs, which I kind of do, but the main reason is some of the software that I need, unfortunately, has to run under XP. So the mail sender itself is running under XP. What's happening here, if you just ignore that, it's just copying a whole bunch of, it's copying about 300,000 or 400,000 messages over to the VM. So how we get them over to the BBS is pretty interesting. We have a script here called the file sorter. What the file sorter does is it sorts through all of the files that's supposed to be available for a certain day. So let's say it's looking for, it's basically looking for today minus whatever year that I want, minus whatever day well, So it's running about 30 years back right now. Currently, I've got the date hard coded in here, but that's only because I wanted to create content for the BBS. So right now, it's looking for July 7th, or I'm sorry, July 11th of 1984. So what it does is it goes through all of these millions of files and it looks for whatever is today, or whatever it considers today, and it puts them into a directory called today. So these are all the files for today. And there could be tons and tons of objects, and as more and more files get converted, there's probably going to be tens of thousands of objects that constitute today. Right now there's 816. So that's what that script does. And then we have another script called, well, it's called node particles. And what it does is it looks through all these files for today, and it creates files to send the BBS. Right now, we can only have a maximum of 500 files because that's all that Centipede can handle in a message base. Honestly, you don't ever really want 500 files. It takes about 3 hours to upload and set these all up for the message board. So what it does is it's going to go through all of those files looking for certain criteria. Unfortunately, I have it all hard-coded in here in a very non-modular way. It'll be fixed later. So after it gets done looking through all these files, it's going to call up the BBS automatically. Now how it establishes a connection is it uses a program called Kermit. Kermit was a real popular protocol in the 80s and 90s, and it allowed people to script their connections over to mainframes and stuff like that. Well, it's perfect for scripting to old BBSs as well. It's using Y-modem to connect over to the BBS and send the files that it needs. And here in just a little bit, we're going to show you how it actually sends over to the BBS. So what we're going to do here is I just changed the date on the today feature, and it's created some files for me. It just created 139 objects for me, and it put them in this particles directory saying that it's ready to go to the BBS. Also, if you look, there's a dialer directory called files, and inside of here is all the files getting ready for the BBS. And what's the difference between those two is these are running through text to SQL. It's a utility that you can find out there that'll automatically convert text files to SQL files. So these are all ready to go. If you open them up, they look a heck of a lot like, well, that in Commodore format, so everything's, you know, kind of reversed, your capitalization's reversed and all that good stuff. So they're all ready for Centipede. Here you have your, this would be if it was threaded, this is what user it's coming from, who it is, and then the date, and this is the date that the BBS keys off of. So we're all ready to go, and normally this would be automated, but for the sake of argument, I wanted to show how this worked. So we're going to kick this off right here. We're going to kick this off manually and tell it to call the BBS. And there's going to be some time lapse here because this takes a really long time normally, and nobody really wants to watch a machine upload for a half hour. So let's call it, what is it, dial BBS. Let's see. So right there, I just kicked off Kermit, and normally it would do this automatically, but I'm kicking this off manually. And normally something great would happen here, but apparently I did something wrong. So let's go figure out what the heck I did wrong. My bad. Let's go kick it off manually. And we're going to go... Let's go find the file. And let's go tell it to call the BBS. Let's try it again. Oh, I see. I accidentally left the session open. Sorry about that. I know how exciting it is watching me screw things up here. Alright. Third time's the charm, maybe? There we go. So it's going to go make a connection. What it's doing is it's using COM to COM, which allows me to create a serial-to-serial connection on the same computer. From there, it's using BBS server and calling my BBS. And if I go over this way, you'll see that it's logging into the BBS. And we'll scoot up just a little bit. And this is all automated, so I don't have to do anything. And give it a sec. It's what it does is it reads through the prompts and comes up with either the appropriate answer or it just enters in something, because I haven't made the script as smart as it could be. So it's logging in just as anybody else, but in this case it's using a Usenet account. And it goes through. I tried to make this I tried to shorten this so it could log straight in and then upload, but unfortunately I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted it to, so I scripted the login. So yeah, it's a little slow. It could make it faster, but I wanted to add some padding in there just in case. So there's a special directory that it uploads to, and after it gets done uploading, it deletes all the files that it uploaded and deletes the upload cache so that the board doesn't know that files were already there. So you see here it's initially excuse me, it's initializing a Y modem send. It should kick off here right about now. And here comes the files from the other computer. And once all those files have been uploaded, it'll run a processor, which I'll show you in a moment. What I did have to do is I had to change the mdl.upload module, because Centipede only allows a 50 file upload before it crashes. So I had to do some modifications so it could do up to 500 files. So I'll let this go, and then I'll show you here in a second what it looks like to process files. So right now all the files are done uploading. The other computer has dropped carrier, and what's happening right this moment is Centipede is inserting new entries into the upload section, which really doesn't matter, because what's going to happen is next time it comes around, it's just going to delete the file that holds a list of all the downloadable files in there, so the process starts all over again. This will take just a second. It just uploaded 140 new messages, and it's done there. So it just realized carrier was lost, and what it does is on log off, it runs a script that processes the mail. First it looks to see if there's any new messages, and if there is, then it's going to launch and go through these messages. So here's the mail tosser right here. It's determining high message by going through the directory and reading all the files that are in it to see where it can start putting its files. I wish there was a better way of doing this. Centipede keeps track of the high message number, but it puts it in a binary message index file, and the only way to look at this file is to log on as a user and be in the message bases. It dumps that information as soon as you go to a different part of the BBS, so I can't use that as a way of finding out what the high message number is. So unfortunately it takes a long time. The more messages you have, the higher number that it has to count up to, the longer this process takes. Unfortunately, I tried every way I could think of around this. So we'll come back in just a second when it gets past this point. So it figured out that the high message is 159. That means there's 159 messages currently there, or at least the highest number is 159. The next step that it does after that is it reads in the config file. There's a config file that basically says I'm looking for this sort of file, and if I find this file, then attach it to this message directory. After it gets done there, it builds a list of files and starts going through them. This is where the actual mail sorting comes in place. You'll see below what file name that it's working on. They're all random file names that were generated on the PC. So it's going to take a little while for it to read through all these files. As it reads through them, it's going to go, okay, well, this message belongs in this message base, this message belongs in this other message base, and it copies them over to the right directory. So if you see over here, you'll just see that the CMD is just having a good old time writing stuff. So the board is finishing processing its last files here. As you can see, it's on letter Z. So it should be done here in just a second. Might take longer depending on how big the file is. It's going to go through, it's going to delete its temp files, which is what it's doing right now. And the more files you have, the longer it takes. You see the CMD is churning away. Probably be one heck of a lot quicker if I had a parallel connection, but I don't. So now Centipede is checking its message bases. This is a built-in function, and you can see it just freaked out. It just said, hey, the retro message board info is missing because I deleted the index. Because I've deleted the index, when next time I run the automatic regenerator, it's going to realize that index is missing, which is what it's doing right now. It says, hey, my index is gone, so I need to regenerate that database. So this takes a while. Pretty much anything, everything takes a while. So it's going to go sort through these files, and when it's done, we'll log in and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, now that it's processed all of the mails, I'm going to show you what it looks like upon the BBS. So I logged in as myself. And we're going to go look at the message menu. We're going to look at one message board. We're going to look at the retro Usenet message board. And messages because, well, there's a whole big story for it. So not all of these forums are populated yet because AltBBS, CompSys CBM, CompSys Amiga, etc. Those didn't actually come until the late 80s. And I'm currently on 1984, and 1984 had net.everything, so that's what you see populated here, net.whatever. You can see net.jokes is really populated as well as net.micro. I might actually change the comps to some net message bases. One problem I'm having is with Centipede is you're supposed to be able to have 26 message groups per message area. So this is one message area. But for whatever reason, it's only allowing me to do sometimes 2, sometimes 20. It's random. I'll actually create them, and then it just doesn't save them, and I haven't quite figured out why. So we'll just show you netmicro CPM. We'll go through there, and we'll just start message 2. Oh, okay. And so there you go. It's pretty unexciting. You'll see here that it says who it's from, the original sender. What time it was originally sent was July 1984, what the topic is. One thing I haven't quite figured out how to do yet is you'll see that everything here says it's a reply, like everything's linked together, but it's not. This is a separate message that has nothing to do with the first one. So unfortunately it kind of groups them all together even though I have threading turned off, and I haven't quite figured out why, but we'll figure that out at some later point. Still, it's interesting that you can go through and read, you know, all this kind of neat old stuff here that happened years and years and years ago. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you guys find some use in it. I know I'll at least read it. So all right, thanks guys.